Imagine a single flame burning on an altar, a single flame burning where there was only desecration. Everything that symbolized your spirit had been destroyed. The words that held your nation together had been torn apart. The rituals that defined your family had been outlawed. What is an individual when removed from their context? Who am I without my family? Who am I without my friends? Who am I without my culture? Who am I without my beliefs? Who am I without my nation? And who are you? Imagine a single flame burning with your hopes of renewal, burning with all your history. A precarious flame. A precarious flame is what Judas Maccabeus started on that first day of Hanukkah so many years ago. It is said that 1 day's worth of oil burned for 8 days. A miracle happened there, and it's celebrated. But it was a very small miracle, and the miracle ceased as soon as the oil was resupplied. Then it became an ordinary flame in a place sacred to the Jews. But that place did not remain in their control. They lost their country to the Romans 63 years before the Common Era. The temple itself was destroyed in the year 70. By 135, all Jewish rebellions had been crushed, and almost all were exiled from the land which the Romans named Syria, Palestina. In the 7th century, Arabs following the new faith of Islam took over the territory and built mosques that remain there to this day. In 1099, the Christians took over the land during the Crusades. In 1187, Sultan Saladin regained control of the Holy Land for the Muslims. In 1516, the Ottoman Turks, also Muslim, gained control over the area and retained control until the Ottoman Empire falls during World War I. In 1917, Great Britain, not in their neighborhood at all, was in control and makes the Balfour Declaration saying that they would create a Jewish state. After World War II, the State of Israel is formed after years of fighting among the people who lived in the land. This holy mountain is sacred. Jews worship at the western wall of the temple, Muslims in the Golden Dome. Who does this mountain belong to? It's small as mountains go, less than 2,500 feet, but it looms large in our history and casts a long shadow over our future. I have read the history of this region, most recently Jimmy Carter's book, and I could go into a long, detailed explanation of the conflicts that have arisen over the years and what is behind each one. But most can be summarized with the following phrase: we have the right to attack them because they attack us. Both sides say they will be peaceful, but you go first. On the rare occasion that either side makes a real attempt to hold their fire, some faction within their own group subverts the process. And every time there's an attack, someone says, "See, I told you peace wouldn't work." And they return to war, as if war has worked so well. I'm convinced that it takes little courage to fight. Violence is a primitive impulse when one's family is being destroyed, and families are being destroyed on both sides. And both sides are wrong to kill. The opening quote that we read at the lighting of the chalice was written during our own country's struggle for liberation, the War of 1812, when the British tried to recapture us. And it is a stronger statement on war than I usually put in quote books, but it's my opinion's not the only one that matters. And after all, it is Channing. I, as you may have gathered in previous sermons, am pretty much a pacifist, and so I'm pretty safe in this moral ground, just saying it's wrong to kill, but I realize that my safety comes from my great distance from the fight. I feel moral, and telling them that they should stop fighting. Yet, at the same time, in my self-righteousness, I also feel powerless to find a real way to make my dream come true. Because even if a two-state solution is reached, that feels to me like a partial solution. It gives up on the notion of that people could live together in peace. The best they can do is go to their separate rooms and not bother each other. Isolation may bring a cessation of war, but I don't feel it is a real peace. Over the years, Unitarian Universalists gathered in our General Assembly have given opinions on the conflict, most recently at our 2002 General Assembly. Therefore, be it resolved that we urge the following principles as a basis for action by the governments of the U.S. and Canada. Freedom from occupation and equal rights for all, including the right to exist in peace and security. Opposition to Israeli settlements, land confiscation, house demolitions, and other violations of international laws. Opposition to all attacks on civilians, whether by suicide bombers, F-16s, or helicopter gunships, or any other means. And support for a central UN role. And these recommendations that we make to other people, again, we make them from our safety and our distance. The other recommendations that we make to ourselves are the hard ones. To become educated on the Middle East issue and engage in honest conversation. I've seen some painful forums on this topic. Redouble efforts for peace based on the goal of justice and human rights for all. Support actions of anti-occupation Israeli peace activists. Encourage those who support Israel but oppose the occupation. And condemn and oppose expressions and acts of anti-Semitism and acts of terror against Jews, Palestinians, or Arabs, or their legitimate institutions wherever they may occur. And you see how these are written. They're written to try to hold a balance of both and. And I imagine people on either side of these struggles aren't comfortable with some of the language that's chosen, some of the compromise of saying, well, don't do it to them and don't do it to them. And it's a sense of trying to be balanced. But when the emotions are so strong, it's hard to be balanced. And I think the balance that we as UUs can bring to this is in our first principle, the inherent worth and dignity of every person, to help all people to recognize the humanity of all of us. Rabbis for Human Rights is a group that was founded in 1988. and it reminds and demonstrates to both religious and non-religious sectors of the public to be reminded that Judaism had another face. Human rights abuses are not compatible with age-old Jewish traditions of humaneness, moral responsibility, or biblical concern for the stranger in your midst. And Rabbi Michael Lerner has formed a group called the Tikkun Community. It comes from the Hebrew word meaning to heal, to repair, and to transform. And he seeks a policy that is both pro-Israel and pro-Palestine. The breakthrough necessary to free the Palestine from occupation will only come when the Israeli people feel enough safety to contemplate arrangements based on trust. And so you need the safety and security for all people. Kamal Nawash is leading a similar group from the Islamic side called Free Muslims Against Terrorism. It's an American Muslim group. And they say, we believe in the reinterpretation of Islam for the 21st century, where terrorism is not justified under any circumstances. The separation of church and state. We believe in democracy and equality for women. And we believe that religion is a personal relationship between the individual and his or her God and should not be forced on anyone. Free Muslims are asking Palestinians to reach out to their Israeli and Jewish partners and asking Israelis to reach out to them. It's good to know that there are voices on either side. It may not be the dominant voices, and it's very seldom that both voices rise up at the same time in equal strength for the peace process to move forward at any time. But they're there, and we can be part of that voice for peace by focusing not on the religion of the people or their ethnicity, but their humanity. We have a faith tradition based on human rights. This allows us to affirm the rights of Israelis to be safe from terror, but it should also hold Israelis accountable when they violate the human rights of their neighbors. And it also should hold Arabs accountable when they do their attacks. We need to look beyond these labels and find a human solution that is humane for all involved. The light of our chalice is a fragile flame. It's a precarious flame. We are a young religion, barely recognizable on the world stage. But we have a precocious flame, young and energetic, not bound by past oppressions, but able to react to the human condition in the present day. Instead of asking who's to blame, we can ask who is hurting, who needs healing, and do we, as a people, have the strength to carry a message of hope to an embattled world? If we can place our light on the altar of the world, maybe a miracle could happen here. I am anxious to hear some of the feelings in this congregation regarding this. Let us talk and listen to each other.
This idea of middle road of supporting everyone rather than supporting someone against someone else. There's something very very you
of that type of thing, and as well as other camps that try to do that person-to-person relationship.
That's important, I think.
On public TV on Friday night, you're going to have to help me on the pronunciations. Zbigniew Brzezinski. At any rate. Yeah, okay. He was being questioned in a program, and he said that there is not the political will in Palestine or Israel from the leadership to solve the problem, and the only solution is for Europe and America to be heavy-handed in forcing a solution. And he said the solution, according to his feeling, would require basically to go back to the 67 borders, to have a Palestinian state in which the UN would monitor and the Palestinians would not have arms, which would address the security issue of Israel. But he said that he agreed with, and he said that if you could get this accomplished, and he wasn't sure you could, but it would require essentially the whole world to push that solution, that then Israel could be the industrial sort of the Singapore of that part of the world, and the Arab countries, there would be a basis, of economic basis for them to work together.
I think one of the things we have to do in looking at this conflict is who facilitates this conflict. Conflict never goes on without money. So who's providing the money for the conflict? In the case of Israel, it's the United States. We give more per capita to Israel than we spend per capita on our own citizens in the United States. So one of the things that could facilitate the peace process in the Middle East is for the United States to stop funding Israel. The reason the Palestinians use car bombs is because they do not have Huey Cobra helicopters. And the other facilitation of the process is that Israel we give them the money, and then they buy the arms from us. So do we have an interesting intermingling of the military-industrial complex again. So cut off the check to Israel, and you might find peace would come in a more timely manner.
Amen.
Just a small piece of the puzzle. I think if there were co-ownership and co-management of the Temple Mount, in which three religions have an interest, headed by an imam, a rabbi, and a priest, who presumably would get along. Because I have this fantasy that in heaven, Christ and Muhammad and Moses all get along. So I think that would be a piece of the puzzle.
Pat?
I'm sorry I don't have more information, but I was watching Book TV yesterday, and there is a new book proposing the idea that there needs to be one country, Palestine and Israel together. And I have no idea, I mean, I haven't read the book, I can't even remember the title of it. I think it's One Country, I'm not sure. But I thought that would be a really interesting idea to pursue, and a really interesting book to read.
Yeah, I realize that this conversation could go on forever, and we could and continue to talk, and I hope we do continue to talk as a congregation about these issues. And may we think about this seriously, of our role and our own personal participation in these issues. Let us now rise as we are able and turn to hymn number 223.